We had only been at my grandfather's cabin for 3 days when Ella found the doll. The place was old, wooden walls warped with time, every floorboard letting out long, aching groans. My grandfather had passed years ago, and the cabin sat untouched since then, tucked away on a hill, wrapped in woods thick enough to choke out the sun. We came to sort his things. I didn't expect anything more than dust and bad memories. But then Ella went into the attic. It wasn't a place I let her go, but she's 6, curious, fearless in ways children shouldn't be. I heard her little feet stomping above the ceiling and called her down. When she returned, she was cradling something in her arms, a doll, porcelain, cracked around the edges, one glass eye missing with faded lace on her dress and wiry blonde curls stiff with age. It looked handmade, delicate, and wrong. The kind of wrong you can't explain, only feel. "Where did you find that?" I asked. "She was in a box behind the chimney," Ella replied. "Her name is Clara, she told me." That evening I heard her whispering in the hallway. I stepped out of the bedroom. "Ella, who are you talking to?" She didn't even look surprised. "Clara, she says this used to be her house." I chuckled, nervously. Kids and their imaginary friends, right? But the next morning the doll was sitting at the foot of my bed. I hadn't touched it. Ella wasn't allowed in my room, and the attic door was still locked. I brought the doll back up to the attic and buried it deep beneath old blankets and broken furniture. That night, Ella stared at me across the dinner table. She doesn't like when you move her. I tried to laugh, but it caught in my throat. Each day after that, the doll would reappear, on a chair in the kitchen, even once on the stairs. And always that broken eye seemed to be looking directly at me. Then came the moment that broke me. I entered the living room and saw the doll sitting on a high shelf. As I stared, frozen, her head turned slowly, deliberately, until she was facing me. I didn't sleep that night. When I did close my eyes, I saw a girl, small, pale, eyes wide with terror, nailed behind the wooden walls, her mouth open in a scream that never came. Her dress looked exactly like Clara's. The next morning the doll was gone. I checked the attic, the closets, even outside. Nothing. But Ella, she still talks to her. She'll sit in the hallway, smile at the air, and say things like, "Clara says you were mean," or "Clara says she doesn't forgive you." Last night I heard scratching behind the wall next to my bed. Not rats, not wind, fingernails. About the doll in the hollow wall. It happened during a thunderstorm, one of those nights where the sky shakes like it's coming apart, and every crack of lightning lights up the old woods outside like strobe flashes from another world. We were staying at my grandfather's lodge. It sat alone, far from town, buried in pine and rot, built from red cedar and oak that had turned black with time. The kind of place where you could hear the house breathe, groan, and whisper all at once. That's when Ella first said she heard it. She was sitting by the fire, her small hands clutching her knees, eyes wide. "Someone's calling my name," she whispered. "It sounds like a baby." I chalked it up to the wind. The lodge had always had a voice of its own, but that night I woke to the sound of tiny footsteps pacing across the attic floor above my room, too light to be mine, too real to be mice. Then came the scratching. I found Ella in a part of the lodge we never used, a rotting corridor behind the kitchen, where the wood warped and the floor dipped with every step. She was hunched beside a panel in the wall, her fingernails working at the edges like she knew exactly where to pry. It gave with a splintering snap. Behind it was a shallow hollow carved roughly into the wall beams. It was filled with doll parts, arms, legs, tiny carved feet, all whittled from wood, stacked like firewood. In the center, nestled in rotted fabric, was a single baby doll. Its face was cracked, skin darkened like burned paper. Yet the eyes were wide open, pale glass shining even in the dark. Ella didn't flinch. She reached in, picked it up, and said, "She's been waiting for me." After that, things changed. At night, we'd hear laughter, not Ella's, something higher pitched. The doll began to move, appearing in places it had no reason to be, in the sink, watching from the window ledge, even outside on the porch in the rain, staring in through the glass. I tried to burn it, built a fire out back and threw it in myself. The flames licked at the fabric but never caught. The wood beneath it sizzled, but the doll didn't char. And then the walls screamed. I don't mean they cracked or echoed, I mean the house screamed, a sound that came from every plank, every nail, every beam of that old place, like something inside was being torn open. The next morning Ella was gone. I searched every room, called for her until my voice gave out, and then I saw it. On her bed sat the doll. It was dry, clean, both eyes now whole, and smiling. That was 2 years ago. I never found her, but sometimes late at night I hear scratching in the walls of my apartment, and faintly a voice, like a child's, whispers from behind the plaster, "She's still waiting." There's an old legend in my grandfather's village, whispered low after dark, when the winds start to murmur through the pine. Never bring a child to the woods behind his cabin after sundown, they say. The trees whisper, the earth remembers. I used to laugh at that, just folklore. Forest tales meant to scare children and keep them indoors. I don't laugh anymore. We were only supposed to stay a few days. My daughter Ella and I had come to clean up the old cabin, his final place before passing. It sat alone in the woods, surrounded by trees so tall they blotted out the sky. Their trunks stood like watchers, their branches knotted like gnarled fingers stretching toward the roof. On the third evening, just before sundown, Ella found something strange. She had been exploring the living room, bouncing on the warped floorboards, when she stepped on a loose one near the fireplace. It gave a dull creak, then shifted. Beneath it was a hollow, a small space carved directly into the earth below the cabin. Inside was a wooden cradle, primitive, hand-carved, and within it lay a baby doll, carved entirely from tree bark, its face cracked like old porcelain, its dress made from faded green cloth that smelled of moss and soil. Ella cradled it in her arms like it belonged to her. "She sings to me," she said that night. "She says her mama left her here." That was when the lullabies began, soft humming melodies, sad and slow like something a mother would sing to a child long ago. But they didn't come from the woods, they came from inside the walls of the cabin. Some nights they echoed from the corners of the living room. Other times they drifted from the floorboards near Ella's bed. Then, just past midnight, I woke to the sound of the front door creaking open. I rushed out of bed and found Ella walking barefoot toward the woods, the doll pressed tightly against her chest. Her eyes were closed, but her lips moved softly, humming the same tune we'd been hearing. I pulled her back before she reached the trees. She didn't fight. She didn't even wake. But in the morning I found tree sap dried on her fingers, and she whispered to me, "She's not alone anymore." That day I tried to end it. I took the doll and smashed it with an axe, shattering its bark face into splinters. The moment I did, Ella let out a scream, not of fear but of pain, like her soul was being ripped in two. She collapsed. Since then she hasn't spoken a word. Now at night I hear the forest again, not the wind, knocking from the trees, gentle but constant against the cabin walls, like they're trying to remind us the woods remember, and they always want their children back.